Welcome to the Lowdown Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that directly impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley, bam! And joining me today, we've got Dustin Loehrs. He's a former worship pastor, a musician, and really taking Oklahoma City by storm in the mortgage world. And Dustin, I'm just excited to have you here today. I feel like you really represent sort of the loan officer of the future, the generation of originator that is growing and doing some really good things to build and scale your business. And so I think the listeners today are going to get a ton of value of just learning about what you're up to and hearing a little bit about your journey. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Connor. It's been great to just chat with you as we've known each other for a while and just kind of see how things have changed and grown over the last few years. And I'm excited to talk today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been really cool just watching. It's one of the spoils of what I do is I get to see people sort of grow up in this business and watch things change year over year, and like your trajectory is just shooting through the roof. So I know the future is extremely bright. But for context, for the listeners, tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into this world and where you're headed.
Yeah, so I mean, just kind of like you said in the intro, I graduated with a music degree and was a worship pastor at a handful of churches here in the Oklahoma City area for about 14 years. And so did that, really loved it, and just kind of came to a point where we felt like we were ready for a change. And so did that about 5 years ago. And as we were just really kind of doing some soul searching and thinking about what that next thing is, almost went into finance when I was in school, was always interested in that. I joke that I used to just have to count to 4, sometimes counted to 3 twice. But got to count a little bit higher now. But had a family member that was connected to lending at the time, and so really just got connected with them and haven't looked back. So
Phenomenal, man. And so you got in through a friend and or connection, and then got into a pretty high-paced environment, and you've sort of stayed there. And one of the things that have come up a number of times on this show is, getting into a fast-paced, high-volume environment is such an advantage for an originator who really wants to grow. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like and sort of how that has impacted you?
yeah, I was really, really green. I didn't know mortgage had 2 G's in it. I mean, I had a house, but that was about all that I knew. And so I went in and I was completely ignorant of just the level of production that I was around all the time. And so I was on a team, and I think my first year, I think we did around 40 million and around 200 deals. And we were kind of one of the smaller teams in the office that I was in. And so really had the advantage of just getting exposed to a ton of different things, seeing a ton of different scenarios and everything else across my desk. I think one of my biggest fears going into the mortgage industry was that I just didn't want to feel like I was just stamping widgets every day, like just approved, not approved. I mean, as you know, everyone knows who's done this, is that every deal is very unique, very different, and so that couldn't have been further from what reality was actually going to be. But I think it was a huge advantage just to see how these people who are producing 40 million, 75 million, $100 million a year, what they do, how they ran their business, how they the systems and processes that they had in place to produce at those levels and offer good quality service to the families that they had an opportunity to serve. It was a really, really great training ground. I think set me up for success for where I am.
That's awesome. So when you talk about systems and processes, what was sort of your biggest takeaway there? Like what have you noticed has really helped a top performer stay at the top of their game?
Yeah, I mean, I am the typical musician. If you ask my wife, like, I am not organized. Like, I am not, like that is not my jam. That's not what I'm good at. But, whenever a referral partner trusts you with a lead, they're trusting you with a lot. It's not just their reputation. It's also their livelihood. It's their paycheck. And, if someone is going to trust sending someone to me, I can't let them fall through the cracks. Like that just cannot happen. And so really just having systems and processes in place, because once you start having so many conversations, so many phone calls, it's kind of like you can't keep track of it all in your head. You have to have, hey, this is our file flow. This is the way that things go. And this is where each person in the pipeline is right now in these steps, and just making sure that you're always moving everybody forward, and really just making sure that every box is getting checked. Something that is like would keep me up at night is like, oh man, like, did I make sure that this approval is good, or this overtime, or this whatever, like that's like my worst fear is someone going under contract and being like, oh no, that house that you thought you bought, that can never happen. And that ruins a relationship with the family, and not just with the agent who sent it to you, but also with the agent who was on the other side of that deal too. And, the real estate world, it's a small circle, and, you gain a reputation in your area really fast. And, it's a really big deal to make sure that it's a positive one and that people trust you.
Yeah. So now that you've only really been originating, for 3 years? Is that right?
Yeah. August will be my third anniversary to be originating just full time.
Yeah. And so for anybody who hasn't looked up Dustin yet, I mean, he 100 units last year, something along those lines.
Yeah, it was about 107 in 2024.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, right? So what early on was a frustration for you, or what was something that you struggled with, that really felt like it was that glass ceiling that you just had to break through in order to level up in production?
Yeah, for me, I think it was kind of feeling like I was on the roller coaster. We hear about that a lot, where I would get a kind of bunch of things coming, and then it's like, oh, you got to get all those across the finish line, get them closed, and then you get there, catch your breath, and be like, I've been dealing with all of these things, and now I don't have anything else in the pipeline. And so I'd have months where I would close 8, 10, 12 deals, and then the next month I'd close 1 or 2, and then hustle and get back out there and get it. And so I just think that consistency. And my kind of word for the year for 2024 was consistency.
Okay.
I wanted to get out of that in 2024, and fortunately was able to kind of do that. And there's a guy in my office who's a top producer, and I was asking for advice on this, and he was like, Dustin, you have got to prioritize your prospecting. We kind of do theme days in our office, which are pretty common with a lot of training programs, and he's like, I don't care. He's like, unless there's a moving truck there, he was like, you've got to make sure that you're still prospecting and bringing in business all the time.
Yeah, so that's a delicate balance. So how do you make time for that, and what was sort of the solution that you found to give you that opportunity to find consistency? Because what you're describing is not unique in our industry. It happens to a lot of people, and there's two paths you can take in that scenario. Either you figure out a way forward, or you throttle back and just kind of get yourself into a situation where you go, okay, well, this is what I can do comfortably every month, and I'll just throttle back to that. So from my perspective, it looks like you pushed through. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, so I've utilized just a few kind of other tools. We're on the phone a lot. I think I try and meet with as many people as I can, but I also want to have good conversations consistently. So utilizing phone burner was a huge deal to me this last year, really speeding up the ability that I can, when I'm calling the agents that I regularly work with and those kind of things, take something that was taking me 3 to 4 hours, and I can knock that down to like 60 to 75 minutes. That's huge in adding time back into my week and just making sure that I'm staying on top of things. But I also think utilizing, we kind of share a processing team here in our office. So kind of once people are under contract, we pass that off, and really trying to utilize them in the way that we're set up to, and letting go of things that I don't really need to keep my hands on, even though I may feel a little more comfy.
Yeah.
I don't really need to be in all the details. And ultimately, one of the goals I had for last year was that I wanted to get my production up to where I could also just hire a full-time team member just for me. And I knew that I had some metrics that I needed to hit to kind of get there, and that there would probably be a little bit of just kind of short-term pain to get there, but I felt like it was worth a short-term sacrifice to try and get to that point, to have a little bit better consistency and work-life balance, but also be able to utilize that to scale more as well. And so
so 2 things. One, I love that you called out phone burner, because I've used that before, and phone burner can exist in a lot of different other iterations. It's an auto dialer, right?
Yeah.
And what I have found that I love about using that is it forces me to make the next dial because it's just going to do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
And what we can tend to fall into is we make a phone call, we talk for 10 minutes, and then we like, okay, I'm going to go get a glass of water and I'm going to walk around a little bit. And then next thing you know, another 5 or 10 minutes has gone by. You got to put in your notes, and then it's just sort of delayed everything. And with phone burner, you hang up and the next call's going. So I love that. But then also that work-life balance and the giving up and the handing things off, and then you meant the key word that I heard in there was the sacrifice. And that's one thing that has been a recurring theme in some of these conversations on the Lowdown podcast is this idea or this action of saying, I'm willing to give a little up today so that I can get further tomorrow. And I feel like that's something that I've seen a lot of people struggle with. Can you just take us through like that thought process, or what made you kind of see that as the most logical thing to do and how you hope to see it evolve in the future?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you a little bit of real talk about me. I had some times previously in my life where I was kind of in between jobs for a little while, and things were tight. And I'm a dad, I have a wife, and I have 3 kids, and they are my why. I want to make sure that I'm providing for them, but I'm also not gone all the time and being a good dad. But I remember when some times were tight, and we're having some like difficult conversations of like, hey, like, this gymnastics stuff is super expensive. I'm concerned about, paying for this, doing whatever. And for me, there's going to be pain at some point. It's either going to be pain now or pain later. And, as I'm kind of was on the roller coaster a lot in 2023, I really don't like that pain later whenever it comes and you're like, I don't want to make that extra phone call. I don't want to, do that extra thing. And basically just kind of came to the conclusion just after some difficult life experiences, I'm willing to pay the price up front and that small sacrifice to avoid what I feel like is a much larger pain further down the road. And that was really kind of, my thought process, because I jumped into originating in August of 2022, which in January of 22 rates were like 3%. August of 22 was like, all right, you're 100% commission now, man. Go get it. Like, it was,
Good luck.
and we're going right into the holidays when things are just kind of naturally slower anyway. But I really just kind of took the mindset of, if this training program was like, hey, you need to be calling 30 new realtors every Monday, and you need to have your list and keep track and try and get coffee with them. And I thought, in this market, 30 is probably not the number anymore. It might be 50. It might be 60. And what am I willing to do that other people are not willing to do, whether it's make an extra couple phone calls, drive a little bit further to meet with that agent for an appointment, work through a file that's maybe a little more difficult. Those are the things that I intentionally kind of made the decision that I was going to be willing to do in the short term to try to make it through some of those more difficult times that eventually led to things continuing in a positive direction.
It's a choose your hard scenario, right? Like you can do the hard thing now, or you can, pay the price for not doing the hard thing now later and go through a difficult time. And man, I've been where you've been, right? Like I can remember 2008. I wasn't in mortgage then, but that was a big, that was a big event in mortgage, but it was a big event everywhere. And, baby on the way, buying a house, everything on the surface looked like hunky dory. But man, we went through some tough times back then, my wife and I. Just kind of going through that really forged us in the fire. We learned a lot of lessons. Like, here's how we budget. These are the things we need to do. And, here's how we get through a hard time. Because we've had other ones come up, since then, and they haven't been as hard. Because we've learned those lessons and, we know the kind of things we've got to do and the levers to pull. And here's how we, get through it. But to say, the proactive activity of I'm going to double down on the work and really give myself that favor for the future to say, what I do today is going to pay me later. So that's a great lesson I think anybody can learn.
Yeah. It's so huge in our industry too, because it's easy to get caught up on this month was great, but what you did this month, really the work you did for this month was, 90 to 120 days ago. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, what are you tracking? What are some of the things like metric wise that you feel are important to do? And what are the things that keep you honest in your system?
Yeah, I mean, I really try and just track the things that I can control. I feel like a lot of times, even just talking to like other producers or agents, they're like, oh man, rates are this or this is frustrating or whatever else. And really, I really just try and track what I can control. And so every week I want to be getting together in person with referral partners and doing a certain amount of that. I track how many good conversations I have every day and those kind of things. I mean, obviously tracking leads and conversion and all of that stuff as well. Kind of, I joke in my office, I kind of want to be like the NSA. Like I want to have as much data as possible on things. And that way, whenever something is good, I can go back and try and be like, all right, what was there a differentiating factor in this? Or when things are bad, like, oh, what was not going on that led up to this? But no, I really feel like I track a lot of stuff and really big on especially just tracking conversion, like how many leads, how many of those are converting to getting applications, how many of those are approved, how many of those people who are approved are actually closing, and just making sure that that's in a good place as well.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for someone who might see that they're not converting at a high level and how they can change that up, or what would you, if you were to see your conversions drop, like what would be the next move?
I mean, I think it's really just number one, you have to track it and you have to make sure your data is accurate because there's been some times where I've done things and realized I wasn't tracking accurately. So that's number one. But I think it's one of those things where we always have to be improving. There is no stagnation. Every month we start back over at zero in this business. And so if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And as a worship pastor, I gave a presentation to a church every 7 days. And it was there, and it's the same people every week. And I got to the point where, you get to know these people, you have great relationships, but I found myself kind of saying some of the same things over and over again, and you don't want to do that. And so I got to where I was very heavily scripted to avoid that whenever I was doing things. But here we kind of have the opposite problem in this business where we have the same conversation over and over again, but we have it with different people. Really honing in on some of the regular objections that you have, some of the regular questions that you get answered, and really dialing in the answer to those so that you are always ready, and that is a very solid, good answer in dealing with those kind of things. I think has also been a really big help in those kind of
Yeah,
important things.
I think of a mortgage application conversation as like a choose your own adventure book, where you get to the bottom of the page and it's like, if you want to go fight the dragon, turn to page 52. If you want to go out of the cave, turn to page 107. And you never know what it's kind of the same framework, but things could take a dramatic turn one way or another, and that's kind of the beauty of the business, right? It's just every new interaction is going to lead to something different and maybe something you've never experienced before. And so yeah, the being on your toes and kind of having some plan of how to react to a different scenario is so helpful. What are your influences like as far as how you keep yourself up to date on the industry and how you kind of groom yourself for the future and as far as coaching wise and things like that? Who are some of your influences, or what are you paying attention to keep your to stay sharp?
Yeah, I am always listening to stuff. I'm a big podcast person, and so I love the Housing Wire podcast. I listen to that all the time. They're super great. They have stuff come out just about every day. They're short, quick, good things. But I'm also like always just reading a lot of things. As a musician for a long time, I eventually kind of came to the conclusion that I can learn something from almost anyone. Like I may be a better overall musician than someone, but there's chances are they do something better than I do. And so I never try to like write anyone off regardless of anything. And so initially, I mean, I was like huge into kind of the Todd Duncan stuff, read a lot of his books, did some of his training and love, just the whole like high trust, that's really, you want to develop that rapport, develop everything. But no, I mean, I listened to a lot of like the TLOP stuff. I did some training with the mortgage marketing animals for a while as well. Steve Kyles is great, and everyone over there, they're super, super good. And, so far this year, I reread Atomic Habits. Love that
Okay.
book.
Yeah.
But as far as like coaching kind of stuff goes, we kind of hold each other accountable in our office. and we'll do meetings just with the LOs and our officers, 4 of us, and we'll kind of create a challenge for each other. Sometimes we kind of joke a carrot or a stick, and so it'll be anything from like, hey, like you need to write 10 handwritten thank you notes this week to people, and if you don't, then you're going to buy lunch for the office, and the other loan officers get to choose where lunch is, who did it.
Oh, yikes.
And so we can have some kind of friendly competitions and some things like that to kind of help push, and it's different. Whenever somebody's going to be asking you, what were you? Did you make your calls? Did you do this? Did you do that? Like, I mean, I know I am more likely to push myself out of my comfort zone when I know someone's going to be asking. I think that's been huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in a sales culture, again, it's just a huge advantage. So really keeps you accountable and helps you learn a lot faster. We're in a business where you have kind of that longer term feedback loop, as it was phrased in a previous episode. Where you don't get 6 at bats a day, right? Like. And so sometimes it's hard to sort of know if what you're doing is working. But when you're in an environment where there's a focus on activity and there's accountability and everyone's talking about it and there's just that kind of those juices are flowing, you really see tremendous growth happen very quickly, especially for those that are, really want it. And the mortgage industry is weird that way. Some people, they don't want to be the 10 unit a month producer. They want to settle in at 4 or 5, but just do it more effectively and efficiently and have, all this extra time and things of that nature. So everyone's version of success is different in this business. But anyway, well, Dustin, I've loved having you on. I appreciate you joining the show. Is there any bit of advice or any sort of closing words that you want to share with the audience?
First off, I just want to say thanks for having me, Connor. Just appreciate you and just love the way that you approach the industry as well. I feel like you always just are adding a ton of value, and just have enjoyed getting to know you over the years and just to kind of seeing what you're always up to and everything. I feel like it's always been helpful for me as well. And then I would just say any parting words is just kind of the difference between discipline and motivation. There's going to be days where you come in and you're like, just not feeling it. There's going to be days where you are, but we have to be disciplined. We have to be consistent if we're going to be successful, and kind of find out what our why is. That's gonna push us through those days whenever you're not feeling great. We talked about basketball, and they play 82 games a season in the NBA, and I'm from Oklahoma City, so I know every day that SGA shows up, he's not just. There's some days where he probably just doesn't want to be there and wants to do something else, but he's got to go play, and he's got to go be the man and put the team on his back and score 30 points a night. And, he's disciplined and chooses to go do that. And in a way, similarly, we're not always going to feel the same with what we're doing, and we got to be able to be disciplined, and that's going to outpush motivation.
Yeah, love that, man. Well, thanks for joining. It's been a pleasure, and best of luck to you in the future, man.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. Appreciate you.
You got it.